Hey folks, Ariel over here, where today we are going to be doing something that I most commonly hear called water glassing eggs. It also could be called lime pickling eggs, etc. So what I'm doing here is preserving eggs so that we can eat them later, like November, December, when our ladies are molting and not laying us buckets and buckets of eggs like they are at this time of year. So this jar looks a little cloudy because I've already used it for mixing other batches, but this is just a ½ gallon of water. The proportions for lime to water here are supposed to be 1 ounce of lime for 1 quart of water. A ½ gallon is 2 quarts, so I need 2 ounces of lime. I don't have a good way to measure ounces. According to the conversion for powdered sugar, which is pretty similar texture to pickling lime, it's should be about 2 1/3 tablespoons equals an ounce. So rounding that to make my math easier and be sure I'm on the safe side, I'm going to do 2½ tablespoons times 2, so I'm doing 5 tablespoons. So this is pickling lime. You can get this from various sources. Our local grocery store actually sells it in the canning stuff, but I'll try to find a link to some online if yours doesn't. But I'm doing 5 tablespoons of lime. And here I've got some eggs to show you from last year, so you can see what the results of this looks like. Now, I better not lose count. 3. The design of this little bag is very annoying, actually. It makes it very hard to get lime out cleanly. I should just dump it in a jar, but I never got to that. Anyway, there I've got 5 tablespoons of lime. And if you get the lime on your hands, it can be a little drying. Our water is so, and soil in this area is so high in lime and such that it really dries and cracks my hands when I'm just doing gardening and stuff. Anyway, so I wanted to get this mixed up so it could be dissolving. You can mix this in anything. I find just putting it in a jar and being able to shake it as easy as anything. So I'm just going to give this a good shake. It's going to turn all milky white, and we're going to set that aside for a minute. So what we're got here is some glass jars. This is I don't know what it was supposed to be, a cookie jar or something. I found it at a thrift store. Used this one last year. This is a similar one that I saved for this video to show you guys. This is a gallon. I don't know what it was. Kraut jar or something my friend gave me. Anyway, so we're going to load this up with eggs. These are all eggs that have been laid in the last few days. And we're going to pick ones that are clean. None of these have been washed. These are just the way they laid them. So these are ones that look clean. And I've got a few in here for examples that don't look clean. I'll show you closer up. Mostly we get pretty clean eggs laid, but sometimes you get ones that are just dirty. But what you don't want to do is wash them anyway. We'll use the dirty ones for other things, but not for this project, because eggs are laid with this kind of miraculous coating called the bloom on the outside that prevents any nasty stuff from getting in there. It's kind of a thin little layer, and when you wash the eggs, it takes that off. Now, if you get eggs from a grocery store in America, where I live, they will all be washed. In some other countries, it's actually illegal to sell washed eggs because of the hazards of bacteria getting in once you take that natural bloom off. Anyway, we do not normally wash our eggs. So these are all unwashed, so this is perfect. And I'm just picking the really clean ones. And I'm setting them in here really gently. It doesn't really matter how they're set into the jar, as long as you don't break them going in. And you can use any kinds of jars. This seemed to be a good size for us, these about gallon to ½ gallon size jars. This is what I used last year, which was the first time I did this. And I wasn't sure if we would like the results, but we really, really did. So we're going to do a lot more this year. Well, actually probably about the same because we had plenty, but we're going to do it a lot more years. But anyway, I've seen people do them in 5-gallon buckets and such if you have a large family. The danger is if you crack one egg while you're doing it, you've kind of messed up a whole lot of eggs. My one sister, and they've got several children, so they've got a bigger household than us. She just does hers in quart jars to help prevent that if you do smash an egg, it does not affect very many eggs at once. So that's something you could do. You don't have to have a great big jar. Like I said, these are all just jars I had and found secondhand and so on. So I'm gonna get this mostly full. And this is my not quite perfectly clean eggs. We will use them for many other things like breakfast. And some of these I may wash and do some hard-boiled eggs. I want to do something with them here and so on, but we're not going to use the not perfectly clean ones for water glassing. So, and our hens are laying us, about 17, 18 eggs a day right now. Icelandics lay about every other day, and technically we have 27 hens, but quite a few of them are busy being mamas right now, so they're not laying eggs while they do that. So it's less than that laying. So it's a very good rate. This is generally the time of, oh, that one's got a spout on the other side I didn't see. The time of year when chickens lay a lot of eggs. So this is a very, very good time to do this because, as I said, if you keep your own chickens, you will rapidly learn that there are times of year where they do not lay lots and lots of eggs. Even though ours lay very well through the winter compared to a lot of breeds, which is one of the things we love about Icelandics, they still have a spell where they molt, and that means they shed out all their feathers and grow new feathers for the next year, kind of like a dog shedding its coat kind of thing. And when they're molting, they kind of use all their energy to do that, and so they don't lay eggs during that time. So I think this is about enough for here because I want to have room to have the lime water come up and cover them and have a little buffer. I always think I can get more eggs in than I can. So you'll see my lime partially settled out in here. I think you can see the layer there. I'm just going to shake this up again. It will settle out in here too, but we're going to fully coat them with lime water. And what this does is just seals up the shell and preserves it. And like I said, last year was the first year I tried this. And I may have to mix another batch. I think this will cover this. Pretty close. I got a little bit of an egg sticking out there. I will be mixing more to do my next batch, so I'll do that in a minute. Anyway, I'm gonna fully cover them, put the lid on, make a label with the date. This jar, which I'm about to show you, was done on March 22nd, 23. Not sure when I'll get this all edited, but today happens to be May 1st, 2024. And so I'm going to label this with the date. And then these are just going to sit anywhere cool and dark. Ours are going to go in the pantry. They could go on a cupboard shelf. They could go in a basement. They could do anything you want like that. So right now you'll notice there's, putting the label on this side so hopefully the camera can continue to see this side. You're starting to see the lime kind of precipitate out. That's fine. It's fully covering our eggs now and it's going to seal them up. And I didn't know how this would work. So these don't need refrigerated, nothing like that. This jar has been sitting in our pantry. Obviously this is into May, this was March, so we're almost at 14 months. The first I used out of here was after 8 months. I think we first tried it. And I'm going to show you what they look like. Now you'll see in here all the pantry's cool enough that it's actually sweating in here. But you can see all the lime is settled to the bottom and the water looks fairly clear. There's a little bit of a lime layer on the surface. So I'm gonna just get a little spoon and pick one out of here carefully. Now you can, I've heard people say wash them thoroughly before cracking. I've also heard somebody who did that and she thought she got a strong lime taste in her egg. I think maybe washing them, especially if you use warm water at all or water any warmer than them, can kind of drive things through the shell. Eggshells are porous. That's how when chicks are growing inside, they get some air and they can breathe and so on. So what I actually do is I just let it drip off here. You could rinse these off, just a little quick rinse. That's not what I usually do. What I usually do is just let it drip off so it's not dripping any lime water. And then at 8 months, we'll see what this does now that I've got the camera rolling. At 8 months, every single one I cracked had a really perky yolk. You could have fried a sunny side up egg with it. Looked just like it had been laid that morning. By 12 months, I was getting more where that yolk just didn't, the membrane wasn't quite as tough, and often the yolk would crack. Not always, but it was getting to be about half of them, the yolk would crack, and so you could still do anything you were going to scramble eggs with. So we'll see what this one that I'm going to do on camera now does at 14 months. Oh, it stood up beautifully. Now I need to get the camera closer so you guys can see this. So this is the one I just cracked. Let me see. I don't know if the camera can show that as I slide it around in the bowl, but that yolk is super perky. I cannot tell that that was not laid this morning, and it was laid 14 months ago. You can see here, a little bit up closer, what I was talking about. There's a little bit of like a lime, like flake that develops on the surface of the water there, just kind of like a skin. That's just fine. When I'm gonna get one of these out, I just do that, pick it up till it's out of the water, and I can grab a hold of it. Like I said, what I normally do is just let it drip off so that it's not still dripping lime. But if you're more comfortable rinsing it, you can. I just wouldn't use a different or especially warmer temperature of water because that can drive things through the shell. So I'm gonna see if I can get 2 in a row to crack perfectly here. Look at that. Another perfectly perky yolk. You can actually see a slightly different color. We have some hens that lay slightly different colored yolks. I don't really know why. They all eat basically the same diet, though I don't have control since they free range over who gets the juiciest bugs that day and so on. So I don't know what all affects that color. They're all pretty bright yellow, but we definitely get a little variation. As you can see, this one's a little oranger, that one's a little yellower. So at 14 months in, as long as you're careful cracking them, boy, there's another really orange one and really perky one. I thought I was going to have one to show you here how the yolk just got watery and cracked, but that's not happening. So maybe I won't have one that does that. This maybe partially, our pantry stays pretty cold, like 30s to 40s Fahrenheit, and I think that helps. There's 4 perfectly perky ones in a row. Okay, I give up. Sometimes the yolks split open, but there's 4 very, very perky ones. And so at 14 months, I could not tell that those guys were not laid this morning. So I guess I can't demonstrate very well how they sometimes are a little more runny, but I do think they stay better when they're cold. And partly I think that these don't have to be refrigerated. I don't think they have to be that cold. And of course, if you just want to scramble eggs, it doesn't matter if the yolk breaks. But we had used part of, actually this jar when it was full from last year, we'd used it most of the way down. I was keeping it in the pantry. I'd just go in there with a bowl and scoop out 4 eggs or 6 or whatever you're going to use that day and leave the rest of the jar. And then it got almost empty, and so I thought, oh, it'll be just more convenient to bring the jar in the kitchen. So I did, and I set it over here on the counter. It was at room temperature, 70 plus degrees, because in the winter the wood stove keeps this place very toasty. And it seemed like the last bunch that I used out of there, almost all of them, the yolks popped. So I wonder if temperature doesn't have something to do with it. Maybe that was coincidental. But I am going to put these back in the pantry where it's very cool. I'm going to add these. I'm going to add a little bit more lime water to be sure they're fully submerged. Add these, and I'm going to sort out some more eggs and put it in this jar and do the same thing. But that's what some people call this water glassing. That's what I've most commonly heard it referred to. I guess there's also a sodium silicate that you can use that's true water glassing, I've read, and this would be called lime pickling eggs. So whatever you want to call it, I don't think it really matters. But burying eggs, unwashed, fresh eggs in lime water, preserves them very well for, that's 14 months. I've heard they can last up to 2 years. I will probably, just for an experiment, since we haven't done it before, put this jar back in there and wait till a full 2 years to open the rest of them, unless we need them for something, just so that I can see what they do at 2 years. But there's what they do at 14 months. And the reason you would do this is if you either have your own chickens, as you probably know, they will lay gobs and gobs of eggs at this time of year, and then they will have a slow time. So if we can preserve the bounty when they're laying gobs, then we have plenty for the slow time. If you don't have your own chickens, you may still want to do this if you have friends, farmers, neighbors that have chickens, because they may have excess at this time of year. I see various neighbors around our area selling their extra eggs right now, because anyone who has chickens tends to have extra eggs at this time of year, and for a really good price. So even if you don't have your own, if somebody who's local to you will sell you fresh, unwashed eggs, I've heard you cannot do this with washed eggs. I did read somebody who said they did it with grocery store eggs and they seem to preserve just fine. I've read that you can't do that because the bloom is gone and they're not as protected. We've done it with unwashed eggs and it works really well, so I can say that. But anyway, if you can get some for a really good deal at this time of year when eggs are naturally in a surplus in the northern hemisphere at least, and then preserve them for other times of year, that might be a reason you want to do it as well, even if you don't have your own chickens. But this works great, and I wasn't sure how well it would. We're really happy with it. We had plenty. I did these 2 jars, and then one I have that's still sitting in the pantry that's another kind of cookie jar, but it's like a size bigger yet. And we used that one and this one and hadn't touched this one yet during our slow time while the hens weren't laying. So I'll probably do at least that many again. If we have extra and they start up laying again and we haven't used through all these, what we'll often do is just because we feed extra eggs to both the cats and dogs as part of their diet because we have lots of them and they're extremely nutritious. So the cats usually share a couple eggs and the dogs each get an egg every day. So we can always feed out extra eggs if we've preserved them for a year and then did not need them because we have more fresh coming in. We can do that. Or you can even scramble up eggs and feed them back to little chicks if they need extra protein, or your laying hens if you need. So I'm never worried about us having too many. I want to be sure we have enough so that we don't have an excess at this time of year. And then in November or December, I'm going to the grocery store to get eggs that aren't ours. But that's how it works. That's how easy it is. I'm just going to mix up another batch of my pickling lime here. Put these jars into the pantry, and you just want to move them a little carefully because they're full of eggs. And like I said, you can do a great big, I've seen people do 5-gallon buckets, but if you're like my sister and you have some small people in your house especially, or you're worried about breaking them, which I am, and I'm not a little person, I find it more comfortable to have smaller size jars than a 5-gallon bucket all at once. Plus I would think over time the weight in a 5-gallon bucket could crush some of the bottom ones. Anyway, this is how it works. This is how I'm lime pickling eggs, and then we will have them for our slow time of year. So I wanted to share that because at this time of year there tends to be lots and lots of eggs. So maybe you have a reason to do this as well. And that's what they look like 14 months later. Thanks for spending your valuable time with us.
I hope you learned something interesting and useful.
Or found something beautiful here.